All right, what's up everyone? Welcome to MI40 University, and today we're going to talk about fat loss mechanics, right? I'm Dr. Jacob Wilson. We're going to get right into it. So when you talk about fat loss, it didn't just magically happen, right? The first thing you got to understand is, fat is obviously around 3,500 calories, okay? Most of it that you're trying to get out of your system is going to be subcutaneous, like right below the skin. We also store fat in our organs and things of that nature, but you're talking about subcutaneous, right? That's how you get shredded. So there's a couple processes to fat metabolism, and the first one is called lipolysis. So what is lipolysis? Well, basically fats are stored in adipose or fat tissue as triglycerides. So what does that mean? You have what's known as a glycerol backbone, and we've talked about glycerol before, and that basically is a 3-carbon molecule. So you have 3 fatty acids bound to the glycerol. Lipolysis removes those fatty acids from the glycerol, and it does it by enzymes that are sensitive to hormones. In fact, there's one enzyme that's called hormone-sensitive lipase, and basically that hormone is sensitive to things like your catecholamines, like adrenaline, for example. It's sensitive to things like growth hormone, right? And what happens is that, like, if adrenaline goes up or growth hormone goes up, that increases the activity of this enzyme, hormone-sensitive lipase, and that breaks off these fatty acids. Once they're broken off, they have to get used as actual fuel. They can technically go back and get re-esterified or reincorporated, so you got to use them as fuel. One of the best ways to do that is exercise, right? Or to limit your ability to re-esterify them or re-put them back in a triglyceride form. So how do we actually amp up this oxidation process, or what is it? Well, basically, once these fatty acids are liberated, you want them to go to skeletal muscle, and they go into our powerhouse, our energy house, which is called mitochondria. So the fats have to get into mitochondria to get used. Then they get oxidized, okay? So what are the things that actually speed these processes up? Well, one, you want to get these hormones elevated. What's some of the best ways to do that? One of the best ways to do that would be things like, for example, interval training. Interval training jacks up adrenaline, jacks up things like growth hormone, and that actually will enhance lipolysis. It also enhances oxidation as well. Okay? Other things that you want to think about is what's going to limit or enhance mitochondrial function, or the ability of mitochondria to take in and oxidize fat. One of it is how much carbohydrates in your muscle itself. So when you train, you do interval training, you deplete the cell of muscle, or say you do a low carbohydrate day and you deplete the cell of glycogen or carbohydrates. That essentially turns on a fuel gauge in your muscle, which activates the mitochondria and allows the fat to move inside of the mitochondria to get oxidized or used as fuel. Now, one thing I want to point out is very, very important. Earlier we talked about aerobic capacity in another episode. Okay, here's the thing that's important about that. If you have very low mitochondria, you're going to be metabolically inflexible, which means you're not going to be able to use fat very well, right? When you're fasted, you have a lot of fatty acids circulating around, but some people can't use them. Why? Because they have very low mitochondria, okay? So training in a depleted state elevates mitochondria. Interval training elevates mitochondria, but interval training also elevates fatty acids because it elevates lipolysis. Now, one thing that you can do after interval training to promote the usage of those fatty acids is something like walking, for example, afterward. That's very, very important. Like Rudy Moore, who's involved with like the MI40 University, recommends this a lot. So if you actually just do the interval and then you're just kind of just doing light walking, not moderate intensity, because that's where you lose the muscle, then that will promote the oxidation of those fatty acids as well. What are things that inhibit lipolysis and that inhibit fat oxidation? Insulin does that, right? This is a problem because if I have a high-fat meal, very high-fat meal, and I have a high amount of carbs, basically you block the mitochondria's ability to transport fatty acids into the mitochondria and get used. So now you have a lot of fatty acids around, a lot, because you ate a high-fat meal, and the carbs and insulin are stopping them from getting in the mitochondria. So where do they go? Back out, into circulation, and they go into adipose or fat tissue where insulin promotes their storage. That's why the Western diet that we have today, McDonald's, things like that, Burger King, high fat, high carb, pizza that's high fat, high carb, is the problem. High fat by itself, on the other hand, you don't impede oxidation at all, and you can say things like ketogenic dieting. Other ways to promote lipolysis would be, again, either lower carbohydrate states where you train, or even things like intermittent fasting or low carbohydrate breakfasts. So that's sort of an overview on the mechanics of lipolysis and fat oxidation. We'll see you guys next time.